Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is the review of Sprint 9 for the development of Gravia. So this sprint ended up being about twice as long as a normal sprint. I basically just kind of kept extending it as the task expanded a bit. So the goal with this sprint and this entire first milestone of development of Gravia was to build a demo level that someone who potentially hasn't even played Gravia before could sit down and play through in maybe about 5 minutes or so is the goal, and get a good sense of what Gravia is all about. And that's pretty tough. There's a lot of you have to get used to the controls in Gravia to do some of the interesting things with the rifts and some of the mechanics. So it was a little bit of a challenge to pick the right kinds of things to have the player do or have the player experience to get a real good sense of the game. So, and this release is intended to be something that someone might play. I'll try to attend some game conferences and have a booth there, and this is something that someone could just walk up and just sit down and try it and get an understanding of what Gravia is. So what I ended up having, just kind of walk through what we have here, this is the demo level as it exists now. There's a bit more in the next sprint to finish this off. There's another big room that's going to have kind of one final encounter in it. But the core concept of what's going on in this is that you as the player, and this doesn't really fit into my overall story, but it's just kind of the story for the demo, you are someone who is tasked with going to investigate some power anomaly in the facility, and you'll start off in this kind of a maintenance room and someone will then communicate with you over the communication system that you should go check out the power anomaly in the warehouse, and that whole dialogue and recording will come in the next sprint. So for now, you'll just have to use your imagination, but kind of the walkthrough of this is that you're going to head over out of your maintenance area through this section here, which is the energy research section of my facility. And this doesn't really have any gameplay other than just to show some of the style of Gravia. It has a couple of rooms that you can look through the window and see into, just some research rooms. And then eventually you will step into this warehouse area where I have a bunch of interactable or objects that are highly interactive with rifts. And the idea is that you can't really expect someone first thing playing the game to really do anything with the Gravia glove. So it's more just let them see something interesting. And the interesting thing you'll see in a moment here will be a rift forming and kind of deforming the environment. So the goal has always been to give kind of a first exciting experience with Gravia that doesn't require any real player input, just kind of something to watch and get a sense of how powerful these rifts are and what they can do. And after that experience, they'll head over here and they'll actually acquire the ability to use the Gravia glove to get past some debris. And then once they get past there, there'll be another final encounter where they'll actually use that glove to fight off some mechanical soldiers. So I'm going to just play through this. It is pretty quick, and that's kind of the intent. But it does show a lot of the objects that I've built. Most of the objects in this area, this maintenance area, and the kind of these offices, I've purchased from the asset store, and I'm going to tend to do that with any more generic things that are just kind of filling up space to make the place look more realistic. For any of the there are a lot of objects that I have created from scratch using Blender and painted them. These support columns in the warehouse area get deformed by rifts, so these will start getting bent when they're near a rift. These support scaffolding that are holding all of the crates and boxes, those also get deformed and pulled into the rifts as well. So we will just kind of play through it and see how that goes. Okay, so that first thing coming down was the player's visor, and you can assume that they're wearing some kind of helmet that has an intercom system. In the next sprint, I'm going to be adding video on the screen that's going to be someone who's communicating with you and telling you to please go to the warehouse and check out what's going on because something seems to be not working properly in the warehouse. But this is your initial room with some tools, and these are all physics objects, so you can interact with them. Not as exciting until you get a Gravia glove later. And then this section that we're in now is the energy research area. So this shows kind of the sense of how the styling and the lighting will work, and the different kind of the character of the area. Very clean, very polished in terms of just the styling, and solid colors and lights play a big part here. These cameras on the wall just to add some kind of sense that there's someone observing and kind of keeping track of what's going on, since this is a secure facility. And this reinforced glass here is can't be broken by rifts, so this kind of is used on some of the areas in energy research to prevent kind of explosions from breaking through the window and other disasters. So then we step through here, and pretty shortly in here we will have the first real start of the experience. So now the guy will say, or the guy helping you will say, looks like the power went out, I'm going to turn on some emergency lighting, see what's going on, and then suddenly you see a rift forming in the distance. So the person helping you out is going to be pretty alarmed by this, but at this point it's pretty much just watch what happens. So at this point, the guy will say he's going to activate the emergency gravity barriers so you don't get pulled into this thing and killed by it. And that's coming up the floor there. And then as soon as that's on, the player can walk around again. And then the guy helping you will say he's getting the power turned back on here so you can get out of here. And this door over here should turn on in a moment. Turns green to indicate that you can actually go through it. And he'll encourage you to get out of there. So you can see with that initial rift, which is still bursting and trying to pull things into it, it's deformed these columns here. All of the scaffolding and storage racks have been pulled in and destroyed, and it's basically left nothing left in this room. So there's nothing for the player to do here except for to continue on through this next section. So at this point, the person helping you will explain that the debris in front of you, you can't get past it, you won't be able to jump over it. Looks like a couple of forklift operators had an accident, and you'll need to find some way to clear those out. So he's going to remotely activate your Gravia glove, and you can see that the hand popped up there, so now you have access to that to fire rift projectiles. And he tells you just to kind of take a step back, aim at those forklifts, and fire to clear them out of the way. So that's what we do. And that explosion occurs because we didn't realize that there was actually an explosive barrel back there, and when it gets pulled into a rift, it explodes and kind of burns all the environment around it. So we'll have been at a safe distance to avoid being killed by that, and that's just kind of the player's first indication that using this glove is not as safe as it may seem sometimes. But that's about it for the demo at this point. The passing through this next door will take you to another warehouse area where you're going to have to fight off a few of the mechanical soldiers that I built in a previous sprint. They're going to come after you because you're using the Gravia glove without authorization, or their AI has gotten a little messed up. But that is for next sprint. And again, the big thing that's missing right now is some music, which will play during the exciting parts, just to kind of add more to it. And also a little bit of, there'll be on the screen here somewhere on the left or the right, there'll be a little video playing of the guy helping you, who's explaining what you should be doing, and that's going to be coming over your visor interface here, which should help the player move along to the next areas and not be confused about what they ought to be doing. That's about it. I figured I might just restart at the section here where you first see the rift and just point out a couple of things as this is playing through. So all of these boxes get pulled in by rifts. Boxes down on the floor. The scaffolding there. If you look closely, you'll see that as soon as the rift gets strong enough, it's going to start deforming those and pulling them in. And when they do get, they actually touch the rift, you'll see them kind of get sucked into it and stretched out and pulled in. Like on the left here, it's about to happen there with that right there. So it has kind of an animation as it gets pulled in, and all of the matter gets pulled in, and those scaffolds just leave just their bases welded to the floor as they get pulled away. That gravity barrier coming up again. And then you're safe to walk around. And of course the gravity barrier, you can step right through it if you want, but that will be instantly deadly because you get pulled into that black hole. If the player chooses to do that, they can, and they'll just kind of watch that little experience again. And in that case, survived it by just kind of getting pulled around and tossed back out through the gravity barrier. So in that case, not as lucky. Okay. So really the big things in this sprint were designing all of the areas. So there's the energy research area, and then there's the warehouse style area, and those are two major sections of the Gravia game. And in the real game, they'll have their own game mechanics that are introduced in each of those areas. But for this demo, I decided to put them right next to each other just to have some variation in the feel as you're moving through the game. And building these objects so that they respond in a nice way to the physics forces, so they deform, and all of these actually have colliders in them so that you can walk on any of these platforms. So they are interactable. If you were to hop up on these, you would not fall through them. And once they get deformed, you can still walk around on these things after they've been kind of deformed by the black holes. So say you deform these with your own rift and then turn your rift off and they're left in kind of a mangled state, you can still hop up on them and move around. So that took a bit of time to figure out exactly how to get that working nicely, and because a big part of Gravia is having these rifts kind of alter the environment that you're in and make it really feel like they're powerful and doing something. Okay, that should do it, and thanks for watching, and you should see hopefully the completion of this level in the next video for Sprint 10.